Hi, welcome back. This is Surya. This is part 2 of our series on describing static bar charts. In the previous lesson, we worked on the children's activities graph and learned how to start body paragraphs clearly, order information from the highest to the lowest, and use a range of vocabulary to avoid repetition. If you haven't watched that video yet, you will find the link in the description. In this video, we'll move on to the transport preferences graph. This one is a little different because it compares several countries, which means we'll focus more on making cross-country comparisons while still applying the same strategy of ordering the data logically. By the end of the lesson, you will know how to describe similarities and differences between countries without repeating the same structures. Let's get started. Now let's look more closely at the transport preferences bar chart. Since this chart compares different countries, the vocabulary we use will be slightly different from what we used in the children's activities chart. For the highest and lowest categories, we can use phrases such as the highest preference, the lowest preference, the most common choice, the least common choice, the largest share, or the smallest share. When making comparisons across countries, expressions like significantly higher, slightly lower, considerably more, considerably less, or about the same as are very useful. And to connect ideas, especially when contrasting one country with another, we can use linking words such as in contrast, compared with, whereas, and in comparison. These words and expressions will help us describe the graph clearly and make precise comparisons between the countries. Here are some sentence structures you can use for describing transport preferences. To start with the highest preference for cars was in Italy at 75%, or the largest share of car users was recorded in Italy at 75%. For comparisons, car usage was significantly higher in Italy than in France. If the numbers are almost the same, we can say in the UK and the USA, the figures were about the same at around 60%. To finish with the lowest, by contrast, the lowest preference for cars was in France at only 40%, or France recorded the smallest share of car users at 40%. These structures help you move from the highest to the lowest while also making clear comparisons between countries. Let's apply our sentence structures to one category from the transport preferences graph, cars. We can start with cars because this category has the clearest pattern, with a very high figure in Italy and the lowest in France. That makes it an easy example to demonstrate the method. First, start with the highest. In terms of car usage, the highest preference was in Italy at 75%. Next, group the middle values. This was followed by the USA and the UK, both at 60%. Notice here how we show equality by saying both. Finally, highlight the lowest. By contrast, the lowest figure was recorded in France at only 40%. This short description is clear and logical. It begins with the highest, groups the middle, and ends with the lowest. And here is how it looks when we put it all together in a short paragraph. Notice how it flows smoothly, with clear connectors like this was followed by and by contrast. This is a very typical body paragraph style in IELTS writing task 1. In the previous slide, we looked at car usage, which had a very clear pattern, Italy at the top and France at the bottom. Now let's see how the description changes when we move to bicycles. Because here the highest and lowest are in completely different countries. First, France had the largest share of bicycle users at 45%. Then, the UK came next with 30%. Finally, in comparison, Italy recorded a much lower figure at 12%, while the USA showed only 10%. And here is the short paragraph. Pause here and read the complete paragraph about bicycle usage. Notice how we change the expressions instead of repeating the same ones. This makes the writing sound more natural and shows variety, which is important for a higher band score. Now let's practice with the motorcycle data. The third transport option. Pause the video, review the sentence structures we discussed earlier, and try writing a short paragraph on your own. Aim for 3 to 4 sentences. Here are some hints if you need them. Highest, the USA around 30%. Lower and close, France 11%, the UK 10%, Italy 9%. You can group these as roughly similar. Useful connectors, meanwhile, in contrast, and by comparison. Useful vocabulary had the highest proportion, recorded, registered, stood at, roughly similar to, and so on. Once you have finished, resume the video and compare your paragraph with the model answer. Here is the model answer for motorcycle usage. I begin with the highest and then group the remaining values as they are roughly similar. Notice how I varied my language instead of repeating the same words. This gives the paragraph more lexical range, which is important for a higher band score. Here is how we can combine the 3 categories into 2 body paragraphs, just as you would in an IELTS essay. In body paragraph 1, we described cars separately because they had much higher figures overall, with Italy at 75% compared to France at 40%. Since this category stands out, it makes sense to give it a separate paragraph. In body paragraph 2, we grouped bicycles and motorcycles, as both had lower percentages and similar patterns. One country at the top and the others clustered near the bottom. Grouping them avoids repetition and makes the description more concise. Finally, notice the beginning phrases, in terms of, turning to, with respect to. These give variety instead of repeating the same opener each time. This organization improves coherence and gives you 2 well-developed body paragraphs, which is exactly what IELTS examiners expect. Let's summarize what we have learned in these 2 lessons on organizing body paragraphs for static bar charts. When describing static bar charts, always start with the highest figure and move down logically to the lowest. Use superlatives for the top and bottom and comparatives for the middle values. Keep your writing smooth by connecting ideas with linkers like while, whereas, in comparison, or by contrast. To reach band 7 or higher, avoid repeating the same vocabulary. Instead of writing popular every time, use alternatives like common, preferred, or favored. Finally, remember this important exam strategy. In IELTS, you don't need to describe every category separately. Instead, group them logically into 2 body paragraphs. For example, in the transport preferences graph, we described cars in one paragraph and then grouped bicycles and motorcycles in the second. That way, your response is concise, well-structured, and shows clear comparisons, which is exactly what examiners want. Thank you so much for watching this lesson on describing static bar charts. In these 2 videos of the series on static bar charts, we focused on organizing body paragraphs, starting with the highest figure moving logically to the lowest, making comparisons, and grouping categories into 2 clear paragraphs. In the upcoming videos, we will continue with more strategies for static bar charts, including grouping data in different ways and making contrasts more effectively. If you found this lesson helpful, please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next part of the series. See you in the next video.